the face of Elrond was ageless, neither old nor young, though in it was written the memory of many things both glad and sorrowful. His hair was dark as the shadows of twilight, and upon it was set a circlet of silver. His eyes were gray as a clear evening, and in them was a light like the light of the stars. Venerable he seemed as a king crowned with many winters, and yet hale as a tried warrior in the fullness of his strength. He was the Lord of Rivendell, and mighty among elves and men. Hey there, cool cats.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, or welcome to Keep on Tolkien.
I'm Joel N.
And I'm Danny J.
And today we are here with episode 37, and we're going to talk to you guys about Elrond.
Elrond. Yeah, if you didn't get from that opening excerpt there. Elrond. It's funny because I've been writing this episode for a while now, and I've been telling people oh, I gotta, you want to hang out or whatever? And I'm like, no, I gotta go home and write this episode. They're like, oh, well, but what's it about? And I'm like, Elrond. And at least 5 of those people have looked at me confused, and they're like, the Scientology guy? Elrond?
Is there a Scientology guy named Elrond?
Elrond Hubbard.
Oh.
Yeah, not Elrond. Like his name, it says L. Ron Hubbard.
Oh,
people
I
think
see.
Elrond is, yeah. So no, I'm not writing about Elrond Hubbard. I am writing about Elrond,
and
the
today
Half-Elven.
Keep on Tolkien, we present to you our episode on Scientology.
Scientology. That's a Patreon episode. We're going to do a Patreon episode about Scientology. It'll be great.
It'll be a scary episode. Anyway, Elrond today.
Who is Elrond? Let's start there.
So Elrond is the most famous lore master in the Third Age in Middle-earth.
Yeah, he's the founder of Rivendell. Rivendell is also known as Imladris. We're going to be using Imladris and Rivendell interchangeable. Right? Yeah. We'll talk about that later. But yes, what else?
He's also the Half-Elven son of Eärendil.
He's the founder of the White Council.
He's also the bearer of the Elven Ring, Vilya.
And Elrond goes by a few names and titles. One of which is Peridel, which means Sindarin. It's Sindarin for Half-Elven. He's also known as Master Elrond, which is like his title more than a name, really.
He's also the Vice-Regent and Herald of High King Gil-galad. And you've got his regularly known name, Elrond.
Elrond. And that is, of course, Sindarin for Stardome. But although in a letter in 1958, Tolkien said that his name meant Elf of the Cave, because he was originally supposed to be found by Maedhros and Maglor in a cave as a child, I think.
Oh.
During their, sacking of the Havens or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that was in an early draft. I don't think that's how it is in canon.
Right, like he changes stuff all the time as he was going through editing.
But yeah, so there is that. It's debatable if it's Stardome or Elf of the Cave. But I like Stardome.
Stardome is pretty sweet. Some other fun facts about Elrond. He's got some incredible healing capabilities. It's not known whether or not that's a magical ability or just a skill that he has, but nonetheless, he's a well-known healer.
Yeah, and he may be the greatest healer of all time, possibly.
Yeah, in the Third Age for sure.
Yeah, for sure, the Third Age. He also has the ability of foresight, which means he can see visions of things that are far away from Rivendell, far off in the world.
Far off as in far away, or far off as in the future?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. He's also got another ability that we've kind of heard of before. He's able to enter people's minds. So he's able to do some mild mind reading. It's kind of dependent upon the host, what information they're willing to give up, I think, is kind of how it goes in the text. But it's a power that's called a Sonway.
Yeah, that was news to me.
Yeah, I've never heard of it actually having there being a word for this power.
Yeah.
Because we just learned about how Finrod Felagund had this power.
Yeah, he has this power. And Galadriel as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It allows them to interpret speech of people that they don't understand the language of.
Yeah.
Because they can more or less just kind of read their minds and what they're trying to say.
Mm-hmm. So that's a cool thing to have. And through that, they can also communicate telepathically with people.
Oh, amongst each other?
Amongst each other,
Those that have this skill.
So Elrond has sent telepathic messages to both Gandalf and Galadriel in The Return of the King.
Do you think they can... Oh, Galadriel, I'm sure, can probably send telepathic messages back, but do you think Gandalf can?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he'll just probably ask, who's the dream guy? His friend. Is it Irmo, the dream guy? The Valar. Geez, we got to refer back to our own Valar episode. One of the Feanturi, Mandos' brother, he's in charge of dreams.
Oh, I don't remember which one was in charge of dreams specifically.
Yeah. That guy. He's going to get his friend, that guy, to deliver messages through dreams. Yeah. So where did Elrond start?
Yeah, let's kind of get to the beginning of Elrond in the Legendarium.
He was born, along with his twin brother Elros, in the Havens of Sirion, in the year First Age 532.
Yeah, that's a good thing to note right off the bat, is that he's a twin. Elrond and Elros.
And Elros.
Yeah, so something special about Elrond and Elros is that their father was Eärendil, the Mariner, who is the son of Tuor and Idril from Gondolin, and Elrond and Elros' mother was Elwing of Doriath. She was the daughter of Dior and granddaughter of Luthien Tenuvio. So they're both considered half-elven.
Yeah, which is that word, the Peridel, right? That we just learned? Peridel? Yeah. Peridel. Sindarin for half-elven. So another thing about Elrond and Elros is their refugee status as young children, or as young adults. Elrond and his family were living in the Havens of Sirion after the fall of Gondolin and Doriath, respectively. Eärendil had fled the fall of Gondolin after Melkor had attacked, and Elwing fled Doriath after the Sons of Feanor had attacked Doriath in the second kinslaying. So they both ended up in those Havens of Sirion.
Yeah, so everyone there was all just kind of refugees from a handful of different kingdoms that had fallen, because I think there are some people there from the fall of Nargothrond too, weren't there?
Yeah, it's a mix of Noldor and Sindar down there.
Yeah, just everyone that got displaced by Melkor, basically.
Yeah. And so during this second kinslaying, this is the third kinslaying we're talking about. During the third kinslaying, Elrond and Elros are kidnapped. Duh.
Yeah, at the sacking of the Havens by the remaining sons of Feanor, they take the sons of Eärendil and Elwing. They kidnap Elros and Elrond.
And so how that happened was, during Elrond's youth, his father Eärendil was often out on voyages in the ship Vingulot, which is of legend, right? And while he's out on one particular voyage, some shit goes down with the Sons of Feanor. They figure out that the Silmarill's there, and they come to take it. And Elwing is at home alone with her two sons when the remaining Sons of Feanor, Maedhros, Meglor, and Amras decide to attack /steal back the Silmaril.
So like we said, this is what results in the third and final kinslaying at the Havens. Pretty much all the refugees that were there are killed. But on the flip side, this is also when Amras, one of the Sons of Feanor, is also killed.
Yeah, got one in the...
Got one of them.
Got one of them.
And Elrond and Elros survive more or less from the vigilance of Maedhros, right?
Yeah. Maedhros and Meglor, they intercept them, I guess you want to say.
Yeah, they find them and they're the ones that end up taking them.
But Meglor is really their...
is it Meglor?
Their foster father, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after the fall of the Havens and more or less being kidnapped by Maedhros and Meglor, it's thought that at this time the brothers of Feanor the sons of Feanor with the two young brothers, it's thought that this is when they made their way to Lindon. So after the kidnapping at the Havens, Elrond and Elros were more or less raised by Meglor. Like Danny said, Meglor was basically their foster father. Meglor eventually started to feel sorry for them, and he was really fed up with the Oath of Feanor and basically all of the terrible things that came from trying to fulfill that oath. Because originally, I think they were going to kill the brothers, weren't they? The Elrond and Elros?
Yeah, and then Maedhros took pity on them.
Meglor?
Meglor.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. There was sort of, I don't want to say a Stockholm syndrome that came from it, but...
It's kind of a Stockholm
even
syndrome.
though the Sons of Feanor came and slaughtered Elrond and Elros' family and
like
friends.
They came to kill your ma.
Yeah,
dude.
and they kidnapped them, but eventually there was love that grew between the two sons, Elrond and Elros, and Meglor.
Yeah, and here's a little excerpt from the Silmarillion about that.
Great was the sorrow of Eärendil and Elwing for the ruin of the Havens of Sirion and the captivity of their sons, and they feared that they would be slain. But it was not so. For Maglor took pity upon Elros and Elrond, and he cherished them, and love grew after between them, as little might be thought. But Maglor's heart was weary with the burden of the dreadful oath.
Yeah. And so Elrond actually learned, Elrond and Elros, they learned quite a bit of lore. And I imagine musical ability.
Oh, yeah.
From Maglor.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, of any of the old elves to hang out with to get knowledge from.
Yeah, Maglor would be a dope one to hang out with.
Yeah, I mean, the Sons of Feanor, they're going to probably still know a lot about, like, craft and smithing, because they're the Sons of Feanor.
Right.
And Maglor was that really good minstrel.
It's not known exactly when the brothers were finally released from Maedhros and Maglor's quote-unquote captivity, but they were, so by the end of the War of Wrath, Maglor and Maedhros were again alone when they, tried to steal the Silmarils and they killed.
Right, because at the end of the War of Wrath, the Maedhros and Maglor are off on their own after they stole the Silmarils.
Mm-hmm. So it's thought that they made it to Lindon by that time.
So they had made it to Lindon, and then they went back to try to steal the...
No, I mean, excuse me, the Sons of Elrond had made it to Lindon.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So in order to understand the Half-Elven, you have to talk about the choice of the Half-Elven, which comes at the end of the first stage, right after the War of Wrath.
Yeah, so at the end of the first stage, after the War of Wrath was over, they needed to straight out a few things amongst the children of Iluvatar. And that was that the line of Eärendil and his wife Elwing, had both the blood of the Eldar and the Edain. So that's where you get the term Half-Elven, because they were technically elf and man. And, well, technically they were also Maiar.
Yeah, because Elwing has a little Maiar in her.
So technically they were of like 3 different races.
Mm-hmm.
But they're called the Half-Elven.
Yeah, so Elwing, she's descended from Beren of the House of Beor, and also from Luthien, the daughter of Melian and Thingol, and Melian being Maiar. So there's where you get your little Maiar.
And his father, Eärendil, was the son of Tuor, the House of Hador of men, and Idril of the House of Fingolfin, the Elves of Gondolin. So that's where they get a little more of both their men. They come from some pretty prestigious houses of men and elves.
Yeah, you got Beor and Hador, and you've got the Sindar and the Noldor. Crazy.
So like we mentioned earlier, at the end of the first age, the Valar gave the Half-Elven a choice. They could either join the race of the Eldar and become immortal, or they could accept the gift of men and eventually die and depart from Arda to no one knows where.
Yeah, to who knows where.
But so Elrond and Elros were given this unique choice.
Yeah, and also Eärendil and Elwing had the choice as well. So Elwing chose to be one of the Eldar and live forever. And Eärendil, though his heart was more with his father's kin, the Edain, he chose to be immortal for the sake of Elwing because he loved her so much.
As for their sons, Elros chose to accept the gift of death and remain one of the Edain. He actually went on to become the first king of Númenor, Tar Miniatur. And all of his descendants are actually the Dúnedain and a lot of the kings that we get from the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor, right?
Oh, yeah. All his descendants are known as the Dúnedain. And they are bigger and hardier than the men of Middle-earth. They have longer lifespans, almost 3 times that of regular men. And also they never get sick. But let's talk about our guy Elrond. He chose to be as of the Eldar. And he remained in Lindon with Gil-galad and Círdan. And he became the captain and herald of Gil-galad.
Yeah, that's a pretty high
position
to have.
Yeah.
The herald of the High King.
Hell yeah.
So at this point, this is when we get to some events that start happening in Middle-earth as we know it.
Because this is after the sinking of Beleriand.
This is after the sinking of Beleriand, yep. So after the sinking of Beleriand, there was a region known as Eregion, and that was sort of the elven realm that was situated at the foot of the Misty Mountains, right? Toward the foot?
Yeah, it's between the Misty Mountains and then like the Dunland and the Grey Flood.
So it's kind of wedged in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's right on the west side of the Misty Mountains. And it was founded by Noldor refugees in 750 of the Second Age. That's where they kind of settled down.
And it was originally governed by Galadriel and Celeborn, but they moved off to Lothlorien in Second Age 1350.
And after they moved off in 1350, then Eregion was ruled by Celebrimbor, son of Curufin. Yeah, remember he was living in Nargothrond when his dad got kicked out. Yeah.
And he basically disowned his father at that point.
Yeah, so he is the grandson of Feanor.
Yeah.
The last surviving descendant. Well, technically, because we're not too sure what happened with Tamaglor.
Yeah.
He could be the last surviving descendant of Fëanor.
Where is he?
But yeah, no, at the end of the First Age of Maglor was just wandering along the shore, singing sad, so nobody knows what happened to him. But this also brings us into the whole Rings of Power scheme. This is the point in time when the Rings of Power came around.
I love how just as Keep on Tolkien, we always refer to it as the Rings of Power scheme.
Because it really was. It was just Sauron's scheme.
It was a scheme that didn't work.
No.
So, yeah, we're not going to get super into this whole Ring of Power scheme here because we've touched on it before. But in Second Age 1695, Sauron gets hella pissed off at Celebrimbor. And he wants the 3 remaining rings of power that they made. And those are Narya, Vilya, and Nenya.
Yeah, he wants them back.
Just give them back.
Give them back.
Just give them back.
So Sauron goes ahead and attacks Eregion and starts what's known as the War of the Elves and Sauron.
So yeah, Sauron attacks Eregion, and Gil-galad sends Elrond to try to sort this shit out in Second Age 1695. And it does not go well.
Yeah, the invading forces of Sauron are too much for Elrond's forces, and Eregion is completely overrun and destroyed. And Elrond withdraws and goes back north with the remaining Noldor that survived, so they're pretty much refugees once again.
Once again, yep. And this is where we get to the founding of good old Rivendell. So Elrond is now wandering around with a group of survivors from the fall of Eregion, and they would really like somewhere to go. So they settle in a narrow gorge near the River Bruinen at the foothills of the Misty Mountains.
And they call their new settlement Imladris, which means Deep Valley of the Cleft. Afterwards, people refer to it as Rivendell.
Yeah, I like Imladris, though.
Imladris.
Imladris. And it is also known as Carnegul in the Westron tongue.
Yeah, to some of those early men that were there. And it's also gotten the title Last Homely House East of the Sea. And Rivendell really became a place for refugees of all wars up until this point. And we've got a nice little excerpt from The Lord of the Rings.
This is actually from The Hobbit.
So we've got a nice excerpt from The Hobbit to back that up.
His house was perfect. Whether you liked food or sleep or work or storytelling or singing or just sitting and thinking best, or a pleasant mixture of them all, evil things did not come into that valley.
Yeah, Rivendell, if I could visit any place in Middle-earth, that's definitely one of the places I'd want to go.
Right? Yeah, just that the reason I chose that excerpt is just because, like, that sounds like the coolest shit ever, dude. Like, you want to eat? Cool. You want to sleep? Cool. You want to work on some cool shit? Cool. You want to hear some really old people tell you stories? Cool. You want to sing? Sing. You know what I mean?
Or just want to sit there and think?
Yeah.
It's best for all of these things. And no evil comes there at all. It sounds awesome. So a few years after the founding of Rivendell, it's actually besieged by Sauron.
Oh, really?
Unfortunately, Sauron's forces are driven back by the forces of Gil-galad and Círdan and the Númenóreans.
Yeah, and they're under Tara Minister at this time, if you guys are really into your Kings of Númenor. Yeah!
Into your Númenórean history. Yeah, so in 1701 of the Second Age, Sauron retreats back into Mordor.
And dealing with all these Sauron problems, Elrond decided to take some initiative, being a wise guy. A wise guy. He's a real wise guy.
He's a real wise guy.
Real wise guy. Elrond, being a wise guy, decided it might be a good idea to start some sort of like I would call it a task force to deal with the Sauron problem.
Sort of a council. And this is where we get the first White Council, because there are multiple.
It's also known as Council of the Wise.
So this first White Council was comprised of leaders of all of the different elven groups that were still residing in Middle-earth. Later in the Third Age, when we get the second White Council, that's when the more famous one that most everyone thinks of when they think of it. That's the one that has the wizards.
Right, yeah. But we'll get there, guys.
We'll get there. But in this first one, like we said, it had the elven leaders for the time. So it included Gil-galad, he was kind of the leader of the council, included Galadriel.
And of course, our man Elrond. And Círdan, the shipwright.
Yeah, buddy.
Of course. And presumably others among the wise.
So that first White Council ultimately decided two things. It decided Elrond's home in Rivendell is chosen as the last stronghold against Sauron west of the Misty Mountains. So they kind of know that that's their last stronghold in that direction. And secondly, they also decided that the 3 elven rings of power should and will remain hidden.
Yeah, they knew that as long as Sauron wore the One Ring, they could not use them because he could then control them, which is no good.
Right, yeah, he'd be aware of them.
Accounts vary, but according to one, this is when Gil-galad also gives the ring Vilya to Elrond. But most other accounts say that Gil-galad, he was given it upon Gil-galad's death at the end of the Second Age.
Right, because as we know, Elrond ends up being the bearer for Vilya, but it was originally Gil-galad's ring.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of varies on when it passes to Elrond. So while Galadriel and Celeborn are in Rivendell for the council, they bring with them their daughter, Celebrian.
And Elrond meets her and falls in love. But he keeps it to himself. He doesn't say anything to anybody because he's got a lot on his mind because what's about to happen, Joel?
Yeah, look at what's coming up here. There's a lot building up. We get now to the Last Alliance. Yeah, in the late Second Age, High King Gil-galad and High King Elendil decide that they're totally done with Sauron's bullshit. And they may have driven him back to Mordor, but I mean, he's still a little piece of shit. So they decide it's time to deal with him once and for all, and they're going to take him out for good.
And both Gil-galad and Elendil spend a whole 2 years gathering their forces. They meet at Amun-Sul, and then they head to Rivendell. And the armies spend a whole 3 years in Rivendell, making preparations of all kinds.
Yeah, they're training their troops, they're forging weapons, making battle plans. This is also when Rivendell gets known as the Great Forge because of all the things that they're forging at the time. And so they're there for 3 years, and they set out from Rivendell in the year 3434 of the Second Age. And this is also when Isildur leaves his youngest son, Valandil, back in Rivendell. And that's more or less how the line of Elendil survives at this point.
Yeah, that's Valandil's Aragorn's his ancestor.
Yeah, because if Elendil had gone with Isildur, he also would have been killed.
Yeah, because his 3 eldest sons were killed. But we'll talk about that here a little bit in a second here.
So, like we've mentioned multiple times before, we're going to be devoting an entire episode to this Last Alliance because we really want to make sure we cover that thoroughly. It's a really big event and it's really cool. So we're not going to get too deep into it here, but we're going to touch on some of the aftermaths. We're going to touch on some of the aftermath as it pertains to our friend Elrond.
So in the war, Elrond fights as Gil-galad's captain and herald. He fights in the Battle of Dagorlad, the Siege of Barad-dûr, and the Siege of Barad-dûr. In the final battle, Elendil and Gil-galad defeat Sauron in combat, and they are both slain.
For a second there, I just imagined Elendil and Galadriel fighting Sauron.
Yeah, wouldn't that be cool?
That would be pretty badass. I imagine that'd be a hell of a fight.
In place of a Dark Lord, you would have a queen!
So this is when Isildur uses the hilt shard of Narsil to cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand. Because as we kind of clarified this amongst ourselves recently, me and Danny, that basically Sauron was kind of already down on the ground when Isildur came up.
Yeah, because in the movie they make it... because the movie's so immortal right now, it's hard to separate the two. But in the movie, he's kind of like grabbing, and then Isildur kind of like swings up and cuts off
all his
fingers, which is wrong. But yeah, so he's already down. Elendil and Gil-galad had made sure of that, and he's already defeated essentially. But Isildur comes up to make it final.
Yeah, basically Elendil and Gil-galad and Sauron are fighting. Elendil and Gil-galad die, and Sauron is more or less defeated. They kind of all defeat each other right there.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Isildur crawls up and uses the hilt shard to just kind of take that ring at the last second.
It's like the end of Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, pretty much. And so using the shards of Narsil to cut the ring from Sauron's hand, that pretty much destroys Sauron's physical form, taking the ring from him.
And like we mentioned earlier, this is when many accounts say that Elrond receives the Elven Ring Vilya.
Yeah, when Gil-galad dies.
When Gil-galad is slain. So many, 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 many lives are lost. Of the Elven commanders, only Elrond and Círdan survive.
Yeah, and when Elrond and Círdan hear that Isildur has now claimed the One Ring for his own, they immediately counsel him to destroy it, because they understand what that means. You keep the ring around, it basically means you're keeping Sauron around. So they try to counsel him to get rid of it, and naturally, as we know, Isildur refuses, and he claims the ring as a weregild for his father and his brother.
Yeah, and Elrond and Círdan can't really argue with that. I mean... You're looking at a guy that just lost his whole family, and like he wants to take a trophy.
Yeah, like, this is my trophy in exchange for my family members.
Yeah. So who are you to say, right?
Yeah, ultimately Elrond does accept his claim, taking the ring, but you probably didn't totally realize the nature of the ring and the implications.
So now we get to the Third Age, right? Second Age ends with the downfall of Sauron. And after the war, Elrond returns to Imladris, and he continues to do Elrondi lore master stuff.
Yeah, this is when Elrond really solidifies his position as a lore master.
Yeah. And finally, in Third Age 109, Elrond and Celebrian are married.
Hooray! And in the year 130, Celebrian gives birth to twin sons, Elladan and Elrohir.
Yeah. Cool things to know about Elladan and Elrohir. They grow up to be very badass warriors.
Yeah, they're a super awesome pair.
And they also roll deep with the Dunedain Rangers in the north.
Yeah, they're like some of Aragorn's best friends too growing up.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
We've actually got a excerpt from The Return of the King. So much alike were they, the sons of Elrond, that few could tell them apart. Dark-haired, gray-eyed, and their faces elven fair, clad alike in bright mail beneath cloaks of silver gray. So I wonder if that's meaning to say that they were identical twins.
Stands to reason.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So Elladan and Elrohir, super cool characters. We like them. They were totally shafted by the movie Shafted.
Shafted. Refer to the Shafted episode.
Yeah, Shafted.
And then 11 years later, after their birth, that is when we get the birth of Arwen Undomniel in the year 241.
So they're 140 years older than her? That's crazy. Could you imagine having a gap like that in your siblings? Joel's got a lot of siblings, but your oldest and youngest are what? How many years apart are your oldest and youngest?
Oldest and youngest, oh God. My oldest sister, Christine, she is in her mid-30s now. I'm sorry, I love you. And Andrew, my youngest brother, I want to say he's turning 20.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, so,
Shit.
Yeah, there's about 15 years there.
Dang. Yeah, not 130, that's for sure.
No, that's a pretty crazy gap.
Yeah.
But we're talking about elves.
Yeah. Joel's family's really nice, a lot of them.
Thanks.
Yeah, I like a lot of your family.
I love you, Mom.
Yeah, if you guys are listening, you guys are cool.
Yeah, we've had Claire on. Yeah, you guys have met my sister.
Yeah, you guys know Claire.
Yeah, she was on our Women in Tolkien episode. So you guys have met one of my sisters.
Yeah, she's great. Christine is really good at baking things.
Yeah, she is. She's a really good cook.
Yeah, she's good at cooking and baking. She's always making us treats when we're over there working on our car and stuff. All right, so let's talk a little bit about a period known as the Watchful Peace. This is a period in the Third Age, which there was a relative peace from war with Sauron.
Yeah, so up until this point, Sauron and his Nazgul were totally fucking up and attacking Arnor and Gondor incessantly.
And in Third Age 2060, Gandalf and Elrond, they suspect that this growing evil that is coming from the Greenwood, and is now known as Mirkwood, at a place called Dol Guldur, they suspect that this might be Sauron, actually.
Yeah, it might be him coming back again. So Gandalf goes to investigate Dol Guldur, as we know. Sauron flees this area of Middle-earth, and he goes out east, and the Nazgul retreat to Minas Morgul.
And in Third Age 2063, this is when the period that we were just talking about, the Watchful Peace, begins.
Yeah, there is even some relative peace in the North Kingdom.
Yeah, and this is when the hobbits start to have autonomy in the region. They had moved there in Third Age 1601, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But by the time of the Watchful Peace, they're starting, because the North Kingdom has fallen, so they're starting to, the Shire's starting to become a thing now.
Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, the Watchful Peace comes to an end in the year 2460, when Sauron returns to Middle-earth and again sets up shop over in Dol Guldur. And this is when he gets known to be the Necromancer.
Yep, and attacks on Gondor and the Dunedain of the North resume.
Yeah, one telltale sign that Sauron's back.
Yeah. God, Jesus, there's a lot of orcs around lately.
I wonder who could be doing that.
Yeah, I wonder who's behind this.
So this obvious resurgence of Sauron once again prompts the second White Council that we referenced earlier.
And this one is called by Lady Galadriel. And she calls for them to reform the White Council in Third Age 2463. And this is specifically to deal with the threat in Dol Guldur.
Elrond is one of the main members of this council as well. Saruman was chosen as the head of the council, which was against the wishes of Galadriel, but they probably had some kind of a vote on it.
Yeah, because what the fuck does Galadriel know, right?
Right, yeah.
She's just like the oldest and wisest among us.
Right. So the second White Council is held in Rivendell in Imladris, and this one included members Elrond, Gandalf, Saruman,
Galadriel, and our good pal Glorfindel.
Yeah.
And also Radagast the Brown.
Oh, he was part of this one?
Yeah. And also Círdan the motherfucking shipwright.
Goddamn right. I mean, why wouldn't you have Círdan there?
Of course Círdan is there.
So in the year 2851, the council meets again to decide what to do about Gandalf's recent discovery that the necromancer is indeed Sauron. So between these two meetings, Gandalf goes to Dol Guldur and he figures out that it is Sauron. So when they meet again, they're like, what are we going to do about this?
Yeah, and that's when part of the quest for Erebor is that's part of it when he finds Thrain, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he goes back the second time.
Yep, that's when he finds Thrain. That's when he finds out that the ring was taken from Thrain.
Yeah,
but that's also
Sauron's got it again, yeah.
Even though the ring was taken from him, this is also when he gets the map and the key from Thrain.
Somehow Sauron wasn't interested in that.
Yeah, he wasn't. He only wanted the ring, I guess.
Or he hit him deep up in his butt.
That's right. Thrain had the map and key right up his butt. For when
I immediately thought of that when I was like, he took the ring, but he didn't take the map or the key? Where did he hide those?
Way up your butt.
I gotta put them way up in your butt.
So at the second council, Elrond and the others wanted to move and strike on Dol Guldur, but they were ultimately dissuaded by Saruman.
And at this juncture, Saruman had been studying up on the ring and Sauron quite a bit. And he had learned that Sauron was looking for the One Ring in the Gladden Fields. He didn't tell the council this. Because why? Saruman himself was trying to lay hands on the ring.
Yeah, this is when Saruman basically started splitting off and trying to do his own thing, basically.
And the council meets again in Third Age 2941. And this time, Sauron agrees to attack Dol Guldur. But this is for ulterior motives. He only does this to hinder Sauron from getting the ring, because he's trying to get it first.
Yeah, the only reason he agrees is because he just doesn't want Sauron to get it.
Yeah. The enemy of my enemy is my friend type of deal.
Yeah. But he's keeping that hidden, though.
Yeah, it's all slippery, slimy, hidden.
But for now, Sauron is driven out of Dol Guldur, and this is when he flees to Mordor. But as we've learned previously, he was actually prepared for this move, and he openly declares himself in Mordor 10 years later, and he begins to gather his strength again for his final assault on Middle-earth.
And the council meets one last time in Third Age 2953. At this meeting, Saruman declares, for whatever reason, that the One Ring has been... He's like, oh, let's not worry about it. It's been taken out to the sea, guys. The ring is gone. Don't you worry about it.
Yeah, I think this is also when Gandalf starts becoming very suspicious.
Yeah, like he's acting awful funny. And so after he's like, yep, don't worry about it. It's all taken off to the sea. I'm just going to go back to Isengard now and breed orcs and shit like that.
Yeah, don't pay attention. Yeah, after the last meeting.
Pay no mind, sirs. Pay no mind.
After this last meeting, this is when Saruman goes and fortifies himself in Isengard and starts to build up all his forces.
So we're going to do a little bit of a backtrack here because we wanted to explain about the White Council, but something shitty happens to Elrond in between the White Council meetings. So shortly after the formation and first meeting of the Second White Council, Elrond and his family experienced tragedy.
In the year 2905 of the Third Age is when Elrond's wife, Celebrian, is assailed by orcs as she crossed the Misty Mountains in the Redhorn Pass on her way over to visit family in Lorien.
Yeah, because she's Galadriel's daughter.
She's Galadriel's daughter, yeah. So she travels over the Misty Mountains to go visit family.
And she is captured and tormented by orcs for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, they make it seem like this was some pretty terrible torture and torment.
Yeah.
Like she got seriously fucked up by this. She also received a poisoned wound while she was being tormented by the orcs.
So her sons and her husband, Elrond, and Elladan and Elrohir, they come to rescue her. Elrond eventually heals the wound as best he can, but she would never fully heal in mind or body.
Yeah, she was, like we said, she got pretty fucked up by those orcs. They were pretty ruthless. She didn't ultimately die, but she wasn't going to heal from what happened.
and she couldn't bear to live in Middle-earth any longer, and she sailed for Valinor in the very next year.
Which is something that often happens with the elves.
Yeah, they give up and they...
Yeah, when the elves would oftentimes experience something that would be like almost deadly or terminal, if you go to sail over into Valinor, it like heals you of your hurts, and it's kind of like going to heaven for a little bit.
It's essentially the biggest, screw you guys, I'm going home.
I gotta get out of here. We've actually got an excerpt about her leaving and sailing for Valinor.
She was brought back to Imladris, and though healed in body by Elrond, lost all delight in Middle-earth. In the next year she went to the Havens and passed over the sea. Yeah, and that's from Appendix A of The Return of the King.
Yeah, so this whole thing really, really pisses off Elodan and Elwë here.
Oh, yeah.
The orcs didn't kill their mother, but, I mean, he basically lost... They lost their mother because of the orcs, and they seriously fucked her up. So after this, they go on basically a never-ending vendetta against the orcs.
Yeah, they go all around the north, killing as many orcs as they can, and making friends with anyone else who likes to kill orcs as much as they do.
Which is why they end up becoming very close friends with the Dunedain Rangers of the Old North Kingdom.
Yeah, Dunedain Rangers.
What an awesome team up, though. The Dunedain Rangers and these couple of super hardy elves.
Hell yeah. So after that familial tragedy, Elrond, he continues to do his Elrond thing in Rivendell. But Elrond was also known to be a friend of the Dunedain of the North. After all, he knew Elendil and Isildur and all those guys.
Right. Yeah, Elrond became known as a good friend of the Dunedain of the North.
Yeah, and as we already learned in the Second Age with Valandil, Imladris was a place of safekeeping for the heirs of the Dunedain.
Yeah, a lot of the heirs ended up staying in Rivendell as they grew up, right?
Yeah. Valandil stayed in Rivendell famously during the Last Alliance.
The Dunedain also sent some of their heirlooms back to Rivendell. For example, after the disaster of the Gladden Fields, where Isildur and 3 of his eldest sons were slain, Isildur made sure that he sent his esquire back to Rivendell with the shards of Narsil and presumably the Ring of Bearer here, because that continues to go on.
And that esquire's name is like Otar or something like that, right?
I honestly don't know.
I think it's like Ohtar, something like that.
Okay.
Anyway, so that guy, he brings him back. It's said that many of the heirs are harbored there, but really we only know about Valandil and, of course, Aragorn.
Right. Yeah, the only ones that we know explicitly about. It's more or less implied that the heirs stayed there. Because, I mean, there are many heirs between Valandil and Aragorn.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's 16 chieftains of the Dunedain, and then there's, like 12 kings of Arnor or something. Yeah, it's a long.
Yeah, it's a long line of folks. But most famous being, like we said, Aragorn. And Aragorn was brought there by his mother, Gilrian, after the death of his father, Arathorn II. He was killed in battle.
Yeah, he was actually killed in battle, rolling with who? The sons of Elrond.
Elodan and El were here. And this is when the heirlooms of the North Kingdom were given into Elrond's care. That being the Ring of Bear here went back into Elrond's care again, the Shards of Narsil, and the Scepter of Annúminas.
And Aragorn, as a child, was named Estel by Elrond, and this means hope. Because he saw that this kid would have a rough life ahead of him.
Yeah, consider this one of Elrond's foresight moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely knew that Aragorn had some shit that he was going to have to do when he got older.
Because the High King of... So he's the High King, the rightful High King, right? He's Sauron's greatest enemy, essentially.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, so he's going to be hunted for his whole fucking life.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows that it's going to be a long road, so he names him Hope.
How appropriate. Elrond didn't tell Aragorn of his true heritage during his childhood. He waited until Aragorn was 21 years old to give him the heirlooms of his house and explain his heritage to him.
Hell of a 21st birthday.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a lot to take in on your birthday.
I wish I could remember my 21st birthday.
Although Aragorn did not get the Scepter of Annúminas on his 21st birthday, that Elrond withheld from him until he was to come into his right as king.
And it's also around this time that Aragorn meets Elrond's daughter, Arwen. and they quickly fall in love.
Yeah, they say that rekindled in Aragorn and Arwen is that same kind of love like between Beren and Luthien.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he in the appendix where they talk about when Arwen meets Aragorn. We talked about this in the Aragorn episode a little bit. She's like singing, and he calls out to her, Tenuvia, like Luthien.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were Luthien."
I thought you were Luthien of old.
Yeah.
Real slick.
Slick. Aragorn's slick as fuck.
But this kind of leads us more or less right up into the beginning of the War of the Ring. The War of the Ring was really sparked by the event that we all know as the Quest for Erebor, or the Hobbit.
Yeah, that was kind of the lighting the fuse.
It's kind of the catalyst for everything. Yeah, in the year 2941, that's when Elrond gets to meet the company of Thorin and Company, on their way over to reclaim the Lonely Mountain.
Elrond reads the moon writing on Thorin's map that we talked about. Wait, we didn't even mean to mention that, and we did earlier in the episode. The map wow.
Yeah.
This is all coming together, guys. It's like this is all like a super intricate, connected legendarium or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's almost like somebody made it this way. Yeah, that map and key that Gandalf got earlier, this is when it finally comes into play. This is when Elrond reads those moon runes on the map, and they find out what the key's all about. And the moon runes on the map tell them how to get inside the secret door to Erebor.
Get in that back door.
Get in the back door.
The quest ultimately leads to two major events that will set the stage for the War of the Ring. The first being the finding of the ring in Gollum's cave. You couldn't have the War of the Ring without finding the ring. And also the Battle of the Five Armies, which is kind of like a proto-War of the Ring battle, sort of.
Yeah. So later on down the line, as we know from the events of the Fellowship of the Ring, Elrond is instrumental in helping save the life of Frodo Baggins after his injury that he got on Weathertop and after the flight to the Ford of Brynn.
Yeah, Elrond does something pretty cool during the flight of the Ford to Brynn. As Frodo and Glorfindel confront the Nazgul on the Ford of Brynn, Elrond releases a torrent of water that sweeps away the Nazgul. Psh.
Yeah, Gandalf also helped, and he added some white riders on top of white horses into the big wave that came down.
But ultimately, Gandalf actually says that Elrond commands the river. We're not really sure if that has anything to do with the power of Vilya, but it might.
That is something to consider. I never thought about that.
Yeah. We always forget that the cool shit that Elrond can do is just only amplified by his ring.
Right.
Yeah.
So Elrond also uses his healing skills, or magic, nobody knows which it is. He uses his skill for healing to help heal Frodo's Morgul wound. His ring Vilya also only amplifies his help in this problem.
Yeah, because the power of Vilya is actually the power to heal and preserve things.
Which is perfect, exactly what he needs. And he is also aided by the help of Gandalf with his ring, Narya, which holds the power to inspire people to resist evil and tyranny.
Perfect team up.
Yeah, perfect team up, especially when you're fighting the Black Breath, right?
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like in Resident Evil when you mix the green and the red herb together and you get like the super herb.
Is that the white herb?
I can't remember. But it makes some kind of... You can craft it, I remember.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it creates a greater effect because the two things together.
Gotcha. So after Frodo is healed, that's when we get to this major event that we've talked about before, the Council of Elrond.
Yeah, so they wait for Frodo to recover from his wound somewhat, at least so he can sit up and talk and shit. But Elrond immediately calls a great council. And although nobody actually coming knows it, the meeting will be about the One Ring.
Yeah, like we explained in the Council of Elrond episode that we did.
Oh god, that episode. So good. I fucking love the Council of Elrond episodes.
Yeah, refer back to that, guys. That was in our season 2. But as we explained in that episode, the people going to the council didn't really know what it was about because the Council of Elrond was very impromptu. It just so happened that all the people that were there just sort of happened to show up in Rivendell around the same time.
Yeah, because a lot of things were going on at the same time.
Yeah, a lot of things in the world.
Yeah.
And they wanted help, and Elrond's like, well, let's sit everyone down and explain to everyone how all these events are related, because pretty much all the events were related, and then together everyone can decide what to do about this one big problem, and that is Sauron and the Ring. Yeah, so he basically at the council, they talk explicitly about how the One Ring has been found, that it is here with them in Rivendell, and what the fuck they're going to do.
I love that. Must have been such an anvil to drop on those people, just like...
Right, some people don't even know what the fuck this is about, because they had to explain the story of the rings to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Boromir's there because he's like, me and my brother had a dream, so I thought I'd come up here. and then he's just like, oh yeah, by the way, the One Ring has been found. Not only has it been found, it's here with us. And we have to do something about it. It's just these three things that come crashing down on you.
Gloin's just there because he's like, oh yeah, we lost word from our cousin Balin, and there was this Black Rider that showed up asking about Bilbo. So we wanted to warn Bilbo. And
we thought that was kind of strange.
We thought that was kind of strange. And then Elrond's like, yeah, well, here's all this other shit that's going on too. Guess what?
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So there are many things that are discussed at the council. The book doesn't even cover all of that is discussed.
Yeah, it's literally like, and then they talked about a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I think it begins with a disclaimer that they're not gonna, that the chapter isn't gonna go over all the stuff that they cover.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I kind of want to know what those other things are.
I so
they say they talk
to.
about stuff that happened like south and east, and I just want to know that history too.
I just wish I had a transcript of the Council of Elrond. I'd read that every day before I went to bed.
Yeah, like we said, if you want anything else or any more information about the Council of Elrond, refer back to our Council of Elrond episode.
Yeah, 2 parts. And I think, didn't we say listening to the 2 parts, 2 episodes, it'll take you about as long to read the section itself?
Yeah, the section, if you were to like listen to the audiobook chapter of the Council of Elrond, it would take as long or longer to listen to the chapter on audiobook as it would to actually go through our 2 episodes. Our discussion. There's, like we said, there's a lot. There's a lot that happens.
Very dense, yes. It's nerd porn, though. That's what we like to say about the Council of Elrond. It's totally nerd porn. But yes, the council. Let's get back to it. Who's at the council, Joel?
Yeah, so let's at least name off the people who were there. So the people at the council were known to be Gandalf, Elrond, Eristor, Boromir, Gimli, and Gimli's father Gloin,
Legolas of the Greenwood, Frodo, Aragorn of the Dunedain, Galdor of the Havens, coming from, of course, Círdan, the motherfucking ship, right? And we've got Bilbo Baggins, and of course, the resident badass of Rivendell, Glorfindel.
Glorfindel's a shit.
Yes, he is.
So as we know, the council ultimately decides to attempt to destroy the ring rather than what they talk about, giving it to Bombadil, throwing it in the sea, using it. Yeah, there's a...
I don't know who stands up and is like, let's throw it in the ocean.
Wasn't that Galdor?
It might have been Galdor. I'm not sure.
I'd have to verify that.
We got to go back and listen to those episodes ourselves.
But yeah, like we know, they ultimately decide that we've got to deal with this once and for all. It's got to be very final. We're going to have to destroy the ring. And this is when Elrond helps select people to go on the journey. And this is when we get the fellowship. The fellowship isn't actually decided at the council. It's kind of after the council.
Yeah, it's in the next chapter. The ring goes south. So let's recap in case you're... Honestly, if you're listening and you don't know the Fellowship of the Ring...
If you don't know the members of the
here?
Fellowship, go back and...
No, go back to episode... I don't know what episode.
Go back and either read the books or watch the movie.
Yeah. Either way. But, it's cool if you're listening. Anyway.
Just ragging on people listening.
Keep listening, too. You know what I'm saying?
So the members of the Fellowship were Gandalf, Aragorn, Boromir, Gimli...
Legolas, Frodo, Sam, Pippin, and Merry.
And Elrond specifically states that he likes this number 9 because it matches the 9 Nazgul. And that's actually something that I only learned relatively recently.
That was during season 2 you learned that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a huge revelation for me.
Yeah.
So we've got a quote from Elrond in the Fellowship of the Ring at the end of this chapter that kind of backs this up. The company of the ring shall be 9, and the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil.
Yeah.
I like how it's 9 walkers versus riders.
Yeah.
Slow and steady wins the race, I guess. So after the Fellowship leaves Rivendell, Elrond more or less just kind of stays there till the end of the War of the Ring and just kind of holds down the fort.
But he did do a few things from afar to contribute to the War on the Ring. For instance, he sent 100 elves to the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Ha!
Ha ha ha! No, he didn't.
Just kidding.
That shit never happened.
That's totally false. He didn't send shit. That was all men.
That was all. Yeah, it was just the movie, guys. Shafted. I was just start doing this. Shafted.
Yeah, no, he didn't send any elves to the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Just kidding. That was my joke.
In the movie, they say it makes even less sense because in the movie they're elves from Lothlorien.
Yeah, and he's like, I come from Elrond of Rivendell.
And they're like, what? No, this makes even less sense.
You know why? Because they just, who they ultimately shafted? Because if Elrond sent troops, Who would be showing up, Joel?
Elladan and Elrond.
Not only them, even cooler.
Glorfindel?
Glorfindel.
Oh, yeah. Glorfindel would be really awesome.
So those elves don't get sent. Sorry, guys. That was a joke. I did that to make Joel laugh in the outline, and we kept it in.
Elrond does actually send his sons Elladan and Elrond to the aid of Aragorn, however.
He does.
Yeah, after the Battle of Helm's Deep. I think this is when Aragorn is about to go take the paths of the dead.
It is.
Yeah.
So he musters a small group of Dunedain. I think there's like 30 of them.
Elladan and Elrond?
Yes. They, being Elladan and Elrond, they go up north and they muster the group of Dunedain, and they ride to meet Aragorn. And they advise Aragorn to take the paths of the dead.
So they're the ones that advise him to do that?
Yeah, from, like, by way of Elrond. Yeah, you know.
Oh, gotcha.
I think Galadriel's the one that says, isn't it? She's like, remember the Grey Company rides from the north, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah. That might have been one of Galadriel's foresights.
Yeah.
So they ride with him through the paths of the dead and through southern Gondor. They fight in the Battle of the Corsairs and the Battle of Pelennor Fields.
And also very important, they were part of the Captains of the West, which was this meeting that of all the surviving leaders of the people after the Battle of Minas Tirith and Pelennor Fields, they got together and they're like, what's our next step? And the Sons of Elrond were present. And they agreed with Gandalf's plan to lead an assault on the Black Gate, saying it was their father's counsel as well. And here's a little snippet from The Return of the King, from the chapter The Last Debate. Then, said Elrohir, from the north we came with this purpose, and from Elrond, our father, we brought this very counsel. We will not turn back.
Very definitive.
Yeah.
Very final.
Yeah, they're like, Gandalf's like, should we do this crazy plan? And they're like,
yes.
Yeah, not only yes, but we came down here to do this in the first place. It's kind of like we're going to do it without you anyway.
Yeah, they're like, that's what we were planning to do. I don't know about
who's
you
coming
guys.
with me? What say you?
What say you?
So, as we all know how the War of the Ring turns out, Sauron is diminished. And Elrond can now, finally, after all that, leave Rivendell for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, this is when Elrond, for the first time in a while, goes out and travels. And he travels to Minas Tirith. And he does two significant things while he's there. He gives to Aragorn the Scepter of Annúminas, because, like we mentioned earlier, he withheld that on his 21st birthday. He gave Aragorn a bunch of his other stuff, but he didn't give him the scepter, because he was holding that for when he was going to become king.
But this, I'm keeping this. That's kind of like if your parents catch you with weed and they give you the bag back with no weed in it.
It's not like they're going to give that to you later. And the second significant thing he does is he gives Aragorn his daughter Arwen's hand in marriage. And that's when he basically gives them their blessing and says, go ahead.
Yeah, and when he does give Aragorn his daughter Arwen's hand, it's kind of funny because if you read the chapter I was talking about earlier in the appendix, he actually basically says to Aragorn, like, you can have my daughter's hand in marriage, but she deserves no less than the High King of the Dunedain. So he's basically like, until you're the High King of the Dunedain, you can't marry my daughter.
Nice.
And
so
here we are.
There's a lot of motivation. The scepter, his daughter.
But yeah, here's a little excerpt about Elrond during the coronation of Aragorn.
And last came Master Elrond, mighty among elves and men, bearing the Scepter of Annúminas, and beside him upon a grey palfrey rode Arwen his daughter, even star of her people.
Yeah. After the coronation of Aragorn as King Elessar Telcontar, the Invignator. He's got so many names.
He's got a lot of titles.
Elrond returns to Rivendell. Why not? Goes home. And we don't really hear from him until the very end of the book. In fact, the last chapter, The Grey Havens.
Come sail away.
Come sail away. Come sail away with me. Says that on the owl.
So on September 29th in the year 3021 is when Elrond and the other ring bearers all sail away for Valinor from the Grey Havens.
Except Sam.
Except Sam, that's right, because Sam was a bearer, but he didn't leave. He left later. I think we determined he left later with Círdan, didn't he?
Yeah.
Or we suspect he did.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we will never do an episode about Samwise Gamgee, so...
Never. Not here.
Yeah, I don't know how we'll ever learn more about it.
God, I wonder. So we've got one final excerpt about Elrond at that scene where they leave the Grey Havens.
I actually cried in a bathtub to that scene on audiobook one time. It was fun. It's very sad.
It's very touching.
Okay, here's the excerpt. Elrond wore a mantle of grey and had a star upon his forehead, and a silver harp was in his hand, and upon his finger was a ring of gold with a great blue stone, Vilya, mightiest of the three.
I actually didn't know that Vilya was the mightiest of the three.
Yeah, man.
That's really cool.
That's why Gil-galad kept that one, yeah.
Oh, straight
Yeah.
up. Yeah, you know the king would want to keep that one.
Yeah. And yeah, so that is Elrond looking fresh to death, apparently, on the day that he leaves Middle-earth.
Looking real good.
It's just funny, he comes with a harp in his hand.
Yeah, he's just like, it's time, guys.
Hugo Weaving didn't have a harp in his hand.
Oh, hell no.
Although it was the only scene in the whole fucking trilogy where he smiled.
Yeah, Hugo Weaving never fucking smiled.
Yeah, okay.
Elrond was a much happier character.
This is the end of the episode. Let's talk about Hugo Weaving for like 30 seconds. It's not in the outline, but let's do it.
Okay.
So Hugo Weaving is a great actor, right? But I do not like his Elrond that much. First of all, he looks too old.
Yeah.
He's got a receding hairline.
Mm-hmm.
And he's way too stern. I was actually, as I was writing this episode, I was looking through I was doing the thing on my Kindle where I was looking at all the things that have to do with Elrond.
Yeah.
And it kept saying Elrond laughed, Elrond smiled. And I was like, reading that, and I was like, this doesn't sound like Hugo Weaving.
This doesn't remind me anything of Hugo Weaving's character of Elrond.
Yeah, he's always scowling, and Elrond's happy.
He almost always has a scowl when he does his roles.
So that's our piece about Hugo Weaving. Let's get to
we
our...
like him, but don't like his Elrond.
Yeah, like him, but don't like his Elrond. So let's get to our favorite segment. What did we learn on the show today? Da-da-da-da.
What did we learn today, Danny?
Well, of course, we learned about the Half-Elven, and we learned about Elrond's captivity as a child, Elrond's role as captain and herald of Gil-galad.
We learned about the founding of Rivendell. We learned about Elrond's role in the Last Alliance, Elrond's marriage to Celebrian.
We learned about the White Council, both of them, in fact. And we learned about Elrond's role in the Quest of Erebor and, of course, the War of the Ring.
We learned about the Council of Elrond, the Sons of Elrond, Elodan and Elrohir, and how badass they are. And finally, we talked about Elrond's final departure from Middle-earth and how fly he was that day.
How fly he was. Harp in hand. And that's pretty much all we got for the Elrond episode for you guys. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully you didn't hate it. And we're really sorry that it was 2 weeks late. Sorry about that, guys. Hopefully this made up for the wait. Yeah. And also check out that Patreon sampler we threw up the other day. We did that as kind of a we're sorry for fucking up. So check it out. But also, follow us on social media. Follow us on the Twitter at KOT Podcast. I also have a personal Twitter at Danny J. That's JAYKOT. I'm trying to convince Joel to make his own Twitter, so hopefully we'll see him soon.
I've never been a big Twitter person. I'm more or less on the Facebook. I stay on the Facebook page most of the time.
Twitter wants you on, Joel. People want you on Twitter, man.
I'm wanted on Twitter.
Yeah. But go ahead and follow us, the Facebook group, too.
We've got an Instagram if you're into that. But we've also, importantly, got a Patreon. Yeah, if you really like us and what we do, you can go to patreon.com/KOT podcast, right? And you can do a donation. And what Patreon is basically, it's a way for us to get funding to do our thing from you guys, the fans. And every little cent counts. Yeah, every cent really helps us just bring more of a quality product to you, because we really like to take the time to make something that we think is worth listening to, and it really helps us out a lot. Yeah, and as a thank you for donating, you get access to cool exclusive content. One of the things, I think, even if you give like $1 a month, one of the things we give you access to is our Dropbox, essentially. Yeah, you can see, you get like all of our information, all of our episodes, all of our show notes. Season 2 is all waves, which people are going to enjoy. Audio files will enjoy. They're WAV files. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, even if you give $1 a month, you get something kind of cool. But we also do these, the Patreon segments, like the one we did last week, which was... yeah, we threw out a little sampler of some of the fun stuff, because we do like to do some fun stuff when we say thank you. A lot of the things that we've done on Patreon are just fun little snippets. Most of the times we are a little bit drunk, but we like to have fun, and we hope you enjoy it. But yeah, so I am and have been and will continue to be Danny J. And I also am and will stay Joel N. And together we are...
We are and have been and will be...
Keep on Tolkien.
Aure and Tuluba!